What's going on, everybody? You found Bottom Tier Collector, and I'm your host, the Bearded One. As always, thank you for liking, subscribing, and commenting on my content. It's always much appreciated, although never required. Today, I'm reaching out for some low-hanging fruit. I'd like to go through my top 10 all-time favorite characters. I would like to mention that this list is a little fluid. Some of it is not fluid and will never be changed. There are some characters I just love with all my heart, and they'll never be surpassed, even if they go dormant for decades. Just the stories I have and I've read, and the memories I have of some of these characters are just memories that'll never be replaced. Well, let's get into it. Enough rambling. I usually ramble a lot on the intro. Again, this is the top 10 all-time favorite characters on my list. At number 10, my 10th all-time favorite character, Donna Troy. Donna Troy has been quickly rising up my ranking list, and it's largely in part due to the show Titans. I love Titans. Depending on the day, the hour, the mood I'm in, either Titans or Doom Patrol is my favorite show. And it really just depends on what I'm watching at that moment that I'll rank ahead of each other. Yeah, I like Titans and Doom Patrol way more than anything that the MCU has put out, and I'm a little biased. However, I do like both. I think you are allowed to like the big two. But back to Donna Troy. I think Connor Leslie, the actress, played a wonderful character. I think she portrayed her very well. Now, I'm not knowledgeable of Donna Troy. I've never even read a comic book. This is maybe the only Donna Troy comic book I own. But that's going to change. I plan on getting the George Perez, Marv Wolfman, Teen Titans Omnibus eventually sometime in the future so I can learn a lot more about Donna Troy. I plan on finishing out this mini-series and learning about her return. And I'm going to look up other major arcs and learn a lot more about Donna Troy. I'm not a huge fan of female characters. I just find they're not written to my taste. However, Donna Troy's different for me. She's definitely a female I can get behind and root for. So next up, I have my 9th favorite character of all time, Mr. Miracle. And to be more specific, the Scott-free version of Mr. Miracle. Mr. Miracle is a legacy character. Mr. is either Dr. Thaddeus Brown or Mr. Thaddeus Brown. I can't remember. He was the first Mr. Miracle, and then Scott-free took over the mantle, and now we're on our 3rd Mr. Miracle. Goodness, I can't forget his name. But he's an African-American gentleman who first put on the costume in the late 80s in Mr. Miracle Volume 2, if I'm not mistaken. However, the Scott-free version is my 9th overall favorite character. He's my favorite babyface, and I'm largely a villain and anti-hero fan. This list you're watching today may not validate this claim, but I promise you I mostly root for villains and anti-heroes. I think good villains carry the story and drive the story where it needs to go, and all a hero has to do is save the day. And a lot of times that's what your real big babyface heroes do. You wrestling fans will know what I mean by babyface. For those of you who aren't familiar with wrestling, think of babyface as a really pure saint-like character. You're like a Superman or a Captain America from Marvel. Someone you think of as really pure, really good, someone who tries to do the right thing no matter the cost. And I believe Mr. Miracle fits that description, even though sometimes he struggles with who he is and what his mission is in life. I still consider him a babyface, and I had to put him on the list because of what I've been reading in Jack Kirby's Fourth World. No offense to Jack Kirby fans out there. I love this cover. I think Jack Kirby is an amazing artist, but his writing ability, at least in Fourth World, this is supposed to be his magnus opus, and it's just very 70s and very, very hard for me to read. I've had this omnibus since Christmas, and I'm still trying to finish it, which says a lot because I blazed through my first 2 omnibus that I ever purchased. This is my 3rd omnibus. However, I'm saying all that to say the Mr. Miracle issues do stand out, and I look forward to getting to the Mr. Miracle issues in that omnibus. I also love his dynamic with Big Barda. I consider my wife my own Big Barda, even though I'm bigger and taller than my wife. She's just a very strong, I don't want to say independent woman. She definitely leans on me at times. I feel like an independent woman gets a bad rep sometimes, but she definitely can hold her own. She definitely can pay her own bills, and she doesn't need me. She just wants me around. And I definitely feel that's the same dynamic Scott and Barda have. Very relatable as well. Next up, the opposite of relatable, my 8th all-time favorite character is Death from Sandman. Honestly, this could be a toss-up. This could be either way. I could have put Morpheus, Sandman, or Death here. However, I got to go with Death. I find her character to be, she's more attractive, definitely. But I find her character to be just a hair more interesting. I think Sandman's the cooler concept. I just think her character is more interesting. The way she acts about death, and the way Neil Gaiman wrote the concept of death, I think is really interesting. And her this issue here, her first appearance, was a really good story. It caught me off guard, and then the way she took the character, she took one of the side characters away to the afterlife or wherever she takes them, was really interesting. I want to learn a lot more about her. If her appearance list is not that big, I fully plan on exploring her a lot more. I just realized you can see my reflection in the Mylar, so maybe, I don't know. The lighting's pretty shoddy in here. You'll have to excuse that. Alright, next up, this is not a first appearance, just the biggest key I have of this character. Next up we have Moon Knight. At my 6th, what is that, 6th? Let's do some maths here. 10, 9, 8, 7. Excuse me. My 7th all-time favorite character is Moon Knight. I think Moon Knight is one of the most unique costumed superheroes in all of comics. I like that he struggles with a personality disorder. And this took me a while to understand. I didn't understand this at all because I bought this issue way before I read much old Moon Knight. My introduction to Moon Knight was the Warren Ellis run from the Marvel Now era. But I've recently learned that these 3 men are each of Moon Knight's personalities. You have Mark Spector here, and then one of these is the billionaire, and then one of these is the historian that you've seen from the show. The show, I don't want to say sucked, but the show was mediocre. It wasn't what I thought. It was real hopeful. I like Oscar Isaac. I hope he comes back. I hope they reprise Moon Knight and revitalize the character. They've got a moneymaker here, and I'd like to see them do more. But inside the books is where I appreciate Moon Knight the most. I think he had the best I think he has the best ongoing title on stands right now. I think more people should get onto it and read it. Moon Knight often gets played off as a cult character or a niche character that's not for everybody. However, I tend to disagree. I think he has a lot to offer for people that are into horror the horror genre or scary movies or thrillers, if you're into like thrillers, I feel like Moon Knight is the kind of character you could get into. And there's quite a lot of people into thrillers and horror movies. Also like that he's brutal. When he's Moon Knight, he kicks ass and takes names. And that's not something I get a lot from superheroes. And it's something I wish more superheroes would do. Next up, we have Flex Mentallo. Now, this is not the first full appearance. This is the first cameo of Flex Mentallo. So he is not on the cover here. However, if there's one character whose power set I would want more than anybody else, the character I would most want to be, if I could be him, is Flex Mentallo. He has the power of muscle mystery. I don't know if he needs to work out to keep his muscles. Muscle mystery may keep his muscles ripped. However, if you've not seen the show Doom Patrol or you've not read this run, he can bend reality and change reality by flexing a muscle group in his body. And it's really cool. I think the concept is totally unique. There's nobody else like him in comics. I don't know how he is in the comics. I haven't read much of Flex Mentallo in the comics, but in the show, he was just a really benevolent. He was kind of a baby faced. He really was. But there's a particular episode, I believe it's Sex Patrol. I'm just going to leave it at that. No need to explain any further. And he helps Elastigirl with a problem in this episode. And I got to tell you, I think my wife would love me more than I've ever been loved the rest of my life if I had the ability to do what Flex Mentallo does for Rita Farr or Elastigirl. So we're getting into the top four here. I really don't know if these top four will ever change. Near and dear characters to my heart. So here we go. At number four, my number four all-time favorite character. Excuse me, this is number five. My fifth favorite character of all time is Crazy Jane. This is the first appearance of Crazy Jane. I don't have her first cover, I believe. She's a very tragic character. One of the most broken characters, if not the most broken character in all comics. Abused as a child, and that abuse led to a personality split. And over time, she developed over 67 personalities. Some of these personalities have superpowers, which is how she fits into comics. And she's just a really unique character. As unique as Flex Mentallo. She grips my heart, and then she can flip. She can change personalities and be a cool badass. And I think she has a lot to offer with her power set. I think she could be viable on a lot of teams. And I also like her dynamic with Robot Man that you see here on the cover. He, at least in the show, I don't know how it is in the books, but in the show, he takes on the role of being her father figure. And I think it's just a really sweet relationship those two have. It's fucked up, but it's sweet in its own morbid, twisted way. I think the actress on Doom Patrol is fantastic. Nobody else could be Crazy Jane but her. And she's probably the biggest reason why Doom Patrol became my favorite show while I was watching it. So yeah, I'm going to pause here, guys. I just realized I don't have a book for my fourth all-time favorite character. So I'm going to do some camera magic and bring you guys back again with the number four all-time favorite character. Alright guys, so we are back, and it's no secret who my number 4 favorite character is. If you've paid close attention to my videos recently, I've mentioned who my top 3 is. So if you can use power of deduction and look at the action figures that I have on display in my past videos, and then go by who I've revealed is already my top 3 of all time, then you'll know that Wolverine is my number 4 all-time favorite character. My absolute favorite mutant. I was trying to figure out how to phrase that without spoiling the rest of the list. For you newer viewers, I think the concept is cool. He's got the adamantium skeleton. He's got an extensive history. I love his relationship with Jean Grey. That tugs at the heartstrings from time to time. Him and Jean Grey had a romantic experience in comics recently in the past year or two, and I was really rooting for that. I got excited. And it's fun to feel like you're finally getting paid off for something you rooted for 30-ish years ago. I've been into Wolverine since I was a kid. Probably the character I've been a fan of the longest, and I blame it all on the arcade games. I thought Wolverine was so cool, and then we got to Marvel vs. Capcom 2 in the late 90s. I was still a kid in the late 90s. I had a Dreamcast, played the heck out of that game, and you can bet I played Wolverine often. I've read this miniseries. Pretty good. Pretty great stuff. And fun fact for you guys, not a fun fact for me. I met Chris Claremont several years ago at a very local con to me, Huntsville Comic and Pop Culture Expo, and didn't bring this with me. I owned this book at the time. I've owned this book for several years. I'm very lucky to say I bought this book and the entire run for $100 back when you could get each book for $25 a piece, even number 1. And I did have FOMO at the time when I bought it many years ago. I just knew what's happening today would eventually come for this book, as far as the value goes. So I'm glad I have it now and don't have to take that inflation hit, the comic boom hit, of 2020 on this book. I don't know what else there is to say about Wolverine. He's one of the ultimate badasses in all comics. Legendary character. And I imagine he's a character on most people's all-time favorite characters list. So next up, we have... This is my number 3 all-time favorite character. Not the Demon, but Tommy Monaghan. Better known as Hitman. Hitman is the only character I can think of in comic book history that, to this day, is still experiencing a permadeath. He's yet to be resurrected, even though I was informed at Memphis Comic Expo years ago that Cullen Bunn, who was writing the New 52 Lobo series at the time, was planning on bringing Tommy Monaghan to the New 52 universe. Inside the pages of Lobo, which would have been really cool, but also made me sad knowing I never got to experience that. Nevertheless, I haven't finished the Hitman books. I've gotten through the first 12, I think, and I've also read other stuff Hitman's in. I've read the last 20 issues of The Demon, which Hitman is a frequent visitor in, and then I've read the Lobo Hitman crossover special, That Stupid Bastich. And I just love Hitman. I love how personal he is. I love that he can be badass and yet still have these emotional moments, and that's a great testament to Garth Ennis and how Garth Ennis wrote him. He's basically just one of those 80s, 90s action heroes, the kick-ass, take-no-names guys with dark, emotional moments from time to time. There's not much to him on the outside, but there's a lot to him on the inside. And I think that's a large part in why I like Hitman, how relatable he is, and then obviously the concept. So just imagine, for those of you who don't know anything about Hitman, imagine Punisher with the ability to confide in people. So we made it to number 2, my number 2 all-time favorite character, and I'm pretty sure you guys have deduced who the top two are. That's right, no secret to many people who follow this channel. We have Etragon the Demon. This book looks really clean on camera, but I'll just go ahead and show you guys. There's color rub, there's damage. I mean, this book's getting a 5.0 on its best day after cleaning a press. I don't know if this book makes it past a 3.0. I think the Demon's really cool. He's borderline a villain, chaotic neutral, if you will. If you believe in all these labels we assign to things. He's just totally badass. I mean, I don't know what else to say. He's also funny, especially in the Alan Grant and Garth Ennis stuff. I like that you never know what the Demon's going to do. You don't know what side he's going to take. You don't know if he's going to take his own side over helping others. I think the costume's cool. The power set's cool. I like watching him go to hell and interact with the other demons. I'm not a demon worshiper, but I do love Etragon. And then last up, a character I'll try not to ramble on for forever. Of course, we have the main man, the one and only Lobo. And that signature belongs to Marv Wolfman, who was the editor on the Omega Man. Hopefully one day I'll get to meet Keith Giffen. I'll never get to meet Roger Slipher. Rest in peace. I think he died in a car wreck a few years ago. Lobo holds a special place in the heart. My first introduction to Lobo was actually MySpace, for those of you who don't know this story. If you are old enough to have used MySpace in its heyday, it was a social media website where the big draw to it was the customizable personal pages. You could customize the layouts and put all kind of backgrounds, and you could put sprites on there, like 8-bit, 16-bit sprites from video games on there. I mean, it was just really cool. I even learned basic HTML coding through MySpace. Believe it or not, it was really an educational experience, and I didn't even realize it. And then fast forward to the first time I ever stepped foot in a comic book shop, and I've already showed you guys, if you watched the comic book collection I'm setting aside for my son video, that Bronze Age Batman was the first comic book I put in my hands. However, the first comic book I intended to buy in that store was a Lobo #1, not Lobo Volume 1 #1. I just wanted a Lobo #1 to check the character out, and I ended up not finding Volume 1 #1, but I ended up finding the Volume 2 #1, the Alan Grant with the embossed cover, a very special issue to me. It was my true introduction to Lobo outside of the MySpace sticker. It was like you could put these, what's called a digital glitter sticker. It was pre-NFT, pre-GIF. It was right around when GIFs were starting to, I don't want to say be invented, but come around on the internet. And I put a glitter Lobo sticker on my MySpace page, and it stood out to me. And somehow, some way, I remembered that, and somehow, some way, I was able to figure out who that character was, and learned it was a comic book character from DC Comics. And so, bringing it back around, I remembered that character on the day we went to the comic book store for the first time and put that number 1 in my hand, and I haven't looked back since. I thought he was really cool. By the time I got to the origin issue and learned that Lobo cut his own head open and put a radio inside his head that constantly plays heavy metal, and they went so far as to say there's it's either a scene or an issue where the host of the radio show playing the music in Lobo's head, he tries to stop playing the music. In fact, I think he does, and Lobo goes over there and threatens his life, and then he kills him and then puts the music on repeat. I can't remember. It's something goofy and over the top like that. And it was just unlike anything else on the stands. And it was my kind of humor with the violence and the over-the-top satirical tones, making fun of comics. And that's part of my personality. I try not to take comics too seriously, and Lobo's the kind of character that helps me remember that. Just have fun with comics. Lobo is just a fun character. He's not meant to be anything serious. He's not meant to be, the poster boy for misogyny. He's just a good, fun character that I think anybody can get behind and have some fun with. That's really all it is. And then, as I've gotten older, my feelings about Lobo have matured and evolved, and there are some actual deeper reasons why I like Lobo. He represents freedom, and freedom for a long time in my younger days. My idea of freedom was no attachments, the Jedi way. No attachments to females or kids or mortgages. It was just the ability to do whatever I wanted when I wanted, and I romanticized that idea. My idea of freedom has changed a little bit and doesn't look so much like Lobo's life anymore, but I still have an idea of what freedom means to me, and Lobo still personifies the idea of freedom to me. I also think he's a necessary character in the fight against crime. I personally think Batman and Superman and the Justice League and the characters that do not kill, I personally believe they are enablers of crime and villainy and murder. And I understand from a meta point of view, when we look at the business of comics, we look at the meta point of view, Joker makes a lot of money. Obviously, they're going to bring Joker back. Obviously, they're going to bring the Penguin back. That's the business of comics. You got to make money. You got to write good stories. And that involves bringing characters back that have been killed off or put in jail or whatever. But then if you think about it inside the comics, like if we go into a more direct view, not so much the meta view of comics, Batman's an enabler. Joker breaks out time and time and time and time and time and time again. Lex Luthor is always trying to defeat Superman, which not so much these days, but from the Golden Age all the way to roughly 5 years ago, Lex Luthor has always been trying to defeat Superman and take over the world time and time and time and time and time and time again, and not killing them and not putting them to bed and not stopping them in their tracks. Doing what it takes to truly stop these characters. I think you're enabling them. Batman knows Joker's going to get out again because and how does he know that? Because Joker always gets out of Arkham Asylum. It does no good. So that's the definition of insanity, and it also means Batman's an enabler. He's almost letting Joker get out so he can capture him again. So that's kind of my beef with a lot of baby faces, and why earlier when I talked about Mr. Miracle, why he's my only baby face on the list. And when talking about Lobo here, I just feel like Lobo's necessary because Lobo does kill. Lobo does turn in bounties, and he is doing what it takes to get crime out of the universe. Whereas I don't see the Justice League doing that at all, even in the meta context. Like, even in the meta context, I see Lobo doing that, getting rid of villains. I don't think he has one reoccurring villain in any book. So that's my top 10, guys. I figured it would go about 30-ish minutes. If you guys will indulge me, I would like to talk about some honorable mentions. And the first honorable mention I have to bring up is Spawn. Spawn used to be in my top 3. My top 3 actually used to be Judge Dredd, Lobo, and Spawn. That was the original Holy Three. But, and here recently I bought the Spawn Volume 1 Compendium. I've read it. I need to buy Volume 2. I'm just trying to discipline myself to finish the Fourth World Omnibus I talked about earlier before I buy the Spawn Compendium Volume 2. And it made me appreciate Spawn a lot more, but I think why why Spawn has fallen out of the top 10 for me is largely in part because I feel like Spawn's jumped the shark. I don't feel like there's a lot left in the tank. I know Spawn Universe popped off. I know it's going great, and I love it. But I feel like it's to the point where Al Simmons' Spawn needs these other characters in the book. He needs to lean on them to bring interest to the book. If it was just a solo Spawn book, in that context, I think it's jumped the shark, and I don't think Al Simmons' Spawn can carry a book anymore. I think we've seen the best storytelling in a single solo Al Simmons' Spawn arc already. But yeah, I still love Spawn. Again, I want to get that Volume 2 Compendium. And maybe one day he'll creep back up into my top 10. Next up, I'd like to mention Jonah Hex. Jonah Hex used to be in my top 10. A character I've really fallen out of love with. And I recently gave away his entire New 52 run, except for my second print, number 1, just because it was autographed by Jimmy Palmiotti. And I still like Jonah Hex. I just don't like Jonah Hex enough to keep volumes of his around when nobody's doing anything with Jonah Hex anymore. He's totally irrelevant. And I think his heyday's come and gone. And I don't know if DC will do much with Jonah Hex for at least the foreseeable future. And it's largely contributed to me falling out of love with the character. The fact that he's so irrelevant. And then also, I will admit, even though I made it to the end of the New 52 Jonah Hex, or All-Star Western run that Jonah Hex started in, it started to become a grind. I started to not care about All-Star Western as much at the end. So that sort of contributed to it as well. Next up, I'd like to mention Kyle Rayner. Now, Kyle Rayner is the opposite. Kyle Rayner is going up the board and not down. I recently bought his biggest keys, Green Lantern 49, 50, and 51. Excuse me, 48, 50, and 51. 49 is the book I don't have in that 4-issue art. And Emerald Twilight, you either love it or hate it, depending on your age. You know, if you're older, you're a fan of Hal Jordan more than likely, and you got pissed off at the time that he got replaced with this nobody, Kyle Rayner, when they already had Guy Gardner and John Stewart available to take over. If you're my age, I'm a millennial, I'm 33. You were a kid at the time, or possibly, even a teenager at the time. And Kyle Rayner probably appealed to you. He appeals to me. I read Emerald Twilight for the first time ever a couple months ago. I made a review on it. I'll direct you to that video if you would so be interested in that. And it blew me away. I couldn't believe an arc that I know is already irrelevant and long forgotten by the company, not by the fans, still impacted me a lot emotionally. Big kudos to Ron Mars for that. Writing such a timeless story. It really is timeless. So I'm interested in Kyle Rayner. I want to read more on Kyle Rayner. I still think of Hal Jordan as the Green Lantern, but I don't know. Kyle Rayner's kind of looking more and more like my favorite Green Lantern. Next up, I'd like to mention Storm. Storm was in my top 10 for a long time. She was my favorite female in comics for a long time until I discovered Crazy Jane and Death. More unique characters, in my opinion. But I still love Storm. I think of her as the Wonder Woman of the Marvel Universe, the standard bearer for feminism and diversity. I think her power set's cool. The ability to control weather. That's really a useful tool. You don't have to just fight crime by controlling the weather. And I think there's scenes in the X-Men animated show where she's making it rain on top of these poor farmers' fields, and that's really cool. That is super heroic, and yeah, I just feel like Storm is that girl from Marvel. I think the MCU should capitalize on that. There's a need for it. There's a want for it. And, the first Wonder Woman movie popped off, and I think Marvel could follow suit with Storm. I really do. I'd like to mention Carnage. Carnage is another character that used to be in my top 10, and I'm just Carnaged out. I really am. I have his first appearance, and I think Superior Carnage is one of the best stories I've ever read. But then we got to these solo Carnage ongoings, and I made it to issue 2 and 3 and didn't care. I think it was volume 2 that I'm referring to. And then I took a hiatus in the middle of that Carnage run in 2017, and when I came back, they were doing Ultimate Carnage, and then I missed that. But then I got into Extreme Carnage, and it's a fart alert. Extreme Carnage sucks. Terrifically. It's horrible. I'm probably going to be getting rid of the whole run. And I'm burned out on Carnage. There's another Carnage ongoing right now. There's symbiotes everywhere, which I'm not saying is a bad idea, but it's too much for me. I like Carnage in a small dose. Now, some characters that people like to say should belong in small doses and shouldn't have their own ongoing series. Lobo's one of them. I disagree. So I think it just depends character to character. But for me, I think Carnage is best used because he really is a villain. There's nothing dynamic about him that would lead me to believe he can carry a 60, 70 issue ongoing. I just don't think. Carnage just survives on being a badass and looking cool. And that's only going to get you so far with a story. So yeah, I'm just Carnaged out. And that's why he's falling off the list. And I think I'll stop there. I've talked enough. If you agree with my list, this isn't my top 10 greatest characters of all time, meaning I think these 10 characters are better than any other character in comics. It's just my personal favorites, the ones I'm most attached to. Please send me your top 10 list. I'd love to hear your top 10 list. And if you like any of the characters on my list, I'd love to talk about them. Thank you guys again, as always, for watching my content. It's much appreciated. If you made it this far, God bless you. Until next time.